As you know, mobility is a critical aspect of golf fitness. From what we found on researching thousands and thousands of golfers is that we need mobility in four key areas. Ability to rotate, especially in the hips, spine, shoulders, and neck. When we test people for rotation, hip rotation, specifically internal rotation of the hip, I feel mine's a little tight there today, is a really key important part to be able to load into your trail side and unload and post up onto your lead leg in the golf swing. And a lack of internal rotation on your lead hip is number one predictor of back pain in golfers. Most golfers, if they golf long enough, will get back pain at some point. And most of the golfers, I'd say well over half of the golfers that we test, they do not pass the hip internal rotation time, especially the first time. How are we going to improve hip rotation? A lot of golfers typically will resort to doing yoga because they think yoga is great for flexibility. While that may be true to some extent, there's some class of yoga poses that we can modify to make them a little bit more applicable to golf. Nothing against yoga, but if you're doing only yoga for golf, you're doing yourself a disservice because we need to increase strength as well. Strength is what's really going to give your joints a lot more durability. We need to be able to rotate, but we also need to have strength around those joints. So we're going to get into, I'm going to break down a classic yoga pose for you today, and we're going to kind of deconstruct it and build it back up as if it were just only for golf. So a quick test we're going to do to look at some hip rotation. This is internal rotation. I should be about 40 to 45 degrees there. I'm probably like 30 to 35 right there. That's a little tight. I can definitely feel that. This side's a little bit more mobile. This is always my more mobile side. So another test we can look at is external rotation. So most golfers, if I go to raise this leg up and lift it up and rest it there, stand tall, you can see this doesn't sit very flat. Okay, so my hips are a little bit tight today. This is timely for me to shoot this video. From here, if I get this leg, I can definitely feel it. You can see the angle of my leg sits a little bit higher. I'm sitting straight up nice and tall, but if you're having trouble just getting your leg up there and it's maybe riding up here and you're having to slouch to do it and you can't sit nice and tall, you may feel like you got definitely some tightness, and this is called external rotation of your hip. So depending on the tension in the muscles and the tone in the muscles, as well as the structure of your hips, is definitely going to play a role. We need to maximize rotation in both internal and external to impact your golf swing. So let's get down on the floor, and I'm going to show you a super quick way to hack what we call the pigeon pose in yoga and make it a little more golf specific. Let's do it. So we're on all fours, ready to rock our pigeons. Typically in yoga, you're gonna kind of get into this position, and you're just going to sort of let your trail leg flow back, and you're just going to kind of fold over. All right, and just hang out there for an indefinite period of time, maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes. We're not simply going to just rest at our end range, okay? We want to have active control through the range of motion, and we also don't want to encourage a lot of flexion in the spine when we're golfing. We want to be fairly neutral in our posture. So what we're going to do to make this a little more applicable to golfers, I'm going to take this hip. This is my left side. It's my tight side, so I'm going to work on that one. That's another pro tip for you golfers at home. If you're really tight on one side or more restricted, work that tighter side twice as much. Okay, if we do each side the same, you're going to perpetuate that imbalance. We want to get more out of the tight side, so I'm going to work it a little more. So I'm going to extend the opposite leg of the one that I'm working on, and then I'm going to take this left leg. I'm going to rotate. This is external rotation of the hip, so my thigh is turning outwards, and then I'm going to take my knee and I'm just going to nudge this up, just like that chair position I was sitting in. I'm going to use this trail knee to nudge this hip into some rotation as much as I can, without any rounding of the spine. So imagine if someone was trying to balance, a water bottle flat on your back here so it's not rolling off side to side. I'm trying to try and get that as flat as I can. So I'm going to try and stick my tailbone out that way. That's going to level out the pelvis. Now I can feel a stretch right deep in this hip and glute. So from here, I'm just going to try and maintain that posture, that long spine from my head down through my body. I'm going to try and push my hip maybe back into the left a little bit till I feel even deeper stretch. So I'm kind of exploring the end ranges of motion in that hip capsule, and I'm sort of oscillating around, moving in a bit of a circular motion in that end range. This hip's a ball and socket joint, so it by nature wants to rotate around. So I'm just trying to get some rotations in there. So I'm making some circles in each direction while I'm in that sort of end range, pushing back and keeping the spine nice and neutral. So we're not tucked under like this. Stick your rear end out, and the more you stick it out, the more you should feel that stretch. And while you're in that end range where it feels tightest, that's where you want to hang out. Stay in that tight range of motion, that end range where it's the tightest. Take a deep breath. This is where it's important to be mindful of what your body's saying to you and just breathe into it. And then stay in that range of motion. And you can oscillate, make some little circles. And then once you feel like it's loosened up a little bit, okay, you've wiggled around a little bit, you gotten the kinks out, you can straighten this back leg a little bit and then push through your hands. Keep your spine tall though. I'm not rounding and crumpling. I'm staying tall and hinging back. Because when we're golfing, we don't want to round from this position a lot. I want you to keep this neutral and hinge from your hip and rotate it. Now I can push back into that range of motion, rotate around, and you're going to spend a couple minutes here in this position, rotating that hip around, exploring that end range of motion, getting those external rotators to open up. So again, we're just modifying this pose, keeping the spine a lot more neutral. I'm actively pushing back into the range of motion, exploring that end range through the hip capsule, and making some oscillations or nice smooth circles. Getting some motion in that joint. Motion is lotion, as they say. We're gonna get that joint lubed up, ready to move. And now I'm gonna go back into that sitting position and retest that hip rotation and see what we get. So now we're sitting back up. I'm gonna just sit up nice and tall, grab this leg, and just see how we feel here. Definitely, I can feel this leg is sitting a lot flatter now. I can sit up nice and tall. I can push this down. I got more active, got more control in this end range of motion, and I feel, okay, things have opened up a lot more. Now I look at my tight side, which I did not work. Ooh, and you can see this had a greater range of motion than this side at the start, but because I spent some time in my end range here, actively working it, it's sitting a lot flatter. Okay, so I've gained some external rotation. So if I loosen up those external rotators, it's gonna have an effect on the ability to internally rotate. So I didn't actively work internal rotation, but just because I loosened up those hip rotators, you can see now I can rotate internally further than I did at the start. So we made some progress. So that is definitely gonna be one key. Next exercise is gonna break down one more exercise for you. Before we get into that, I would love for you guys to subscribe, smash that subscribe button. That's gonna help us deliver more great content to you guys and provide you golfers with all the tips you need to have longevity in golf. Okay, now that we've gained some range of motion in terms of rotation in that leg, now it's time to work on hinging that hip. We're gonna bring it up into a standing position. Our yoga pose would be sort of a modified warrior or single leg pose where I think it's warrior 3 it's called, where we're out here. Again, holding this definitely is gonna work on the balance, but we want control through that range of motion. So we're gonna work on what's called a single leg RDL or Romanian deadlift, which is a hinge on one leg. Again, you can start with a balance assist. I'm gonna use a dowel in the one hand. You can have your hand against a wall. Whatever's there for balance, you're gonna stand on the opposite leg, keep the head tall, and I'm gonna keep my pelvis square, okay? So these two hip bones, if you're imagining their headlights, they're always gonna point straight forwards or straight down. They're never gonna rotate. So I want you to actually drive this heel back. I'm hinging this hip back. As I do that, I'm keeping my pelvis square to the floor. So my belly button is pointing just inside my foot. Here's sort of that bottom position, then we're coming up. So again, use a balance aid. If you can keep your pelvis square and be very balanced through this, use this balance aid for as little as you need it. Just have the hand sliding down. If that's no issue for you, then we can take the dowel or golf club, pull it up, hold it about shoulder width, gonna pull it apart a little bit. So putting a little tension in the shoulders and core, I'm gonna press that against my thigh, and then we're actually going to drive that heel back. This is, again, a progression. I'm getting that hip hinging back. I really feel my glute waking up now. I get just past the kneecap, keeping that in contact with my leg. I'm really feeling these muscles work. I'm gonna push that foot through the floor to come all the way up, feeling that glute squeeze. I'm getting this glute activating now through a hinging motion. And I'm driving that leg back, pressing that dowel or golf club against my body, maintain balance, and exhale up. Inhale as you hinge back. Control it, and exhale all the way up. So again, working on that, again, starting with body weight, you can eventually progress to dumbbells or a barbell. I would suggest just starting with the body weight. When we're doing it with weights, the key thing to remember is not to reach with the hands. That's why I like pressing this against the body, because it doesn't allow you to separate the arms from the chest. Most people, when they do this with dumbbells, will end up reaching down, and that ends up throwing your posture forward. We're gonna keep this pressed against. So if you had dumbbells, think about keeping them on either side of the thigh. Wrists are getting to about kneecap height. And that is my bottom position, then coming all the way back up. So that RDL or hip hinge is a fantastic way to also reinforce some stability into that joint, okay? So that is gonna allow you to load into the one leg, unload into the other leg, create a powerful golf swing. There's a couple of moves for you that are really gonna help you. Again, guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Please subscribe so we can keep delivering you more great golf fitness content.